Coming up on Bear News, the X Games, but with a UNC twist, take over the rec center.
And it's the time of the year that politics start getting interesting. As if they weren't already.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Gavin Burlack.
And I'm Trey Crocht. The flu season can be destructive and has the ability to spread across a campus in a matter of sneezes and coughs. Luckily for UNC students, the Student Health Center at Cassidy Hall reported a record low of 12 positive influenza cases for this past year. Bear News reporter Austin Sack headed to Cassidy Hall to see what caused the major decrease.
Employees choose to utilize throughout the year. The Health Center is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. During the cold and flu season, patients may be asked to wait briefly for their appointments, but can enjoy many informational readings, and of course are always asked to cover their cough and wash their hands. After being taken back into the clinic, patients will find several welcoming examination rooms fully equipped with medical supplies. During this current flu season at UNC, there is a record low number of positive influenza cases among students. There have only been 12 confirmed cases this year, which equals around a 93% drop in cases compared to the 2009-10 academic year. As manager of Cassidy Hall, Tara Campbell tells me, the major decrease could be a result of the health center beginning to offer free flu shots to all students.
Hi, my name is Tara Campbell, and I'm actually the manager here at UNC. Some of the things that we've been doing on campus to, help with the students to keep from getting the flu is we're trying to educate them on washing their hands and definitely being, cleaner and not be sharing glasses and drinks and those kinds of things. We do free flu shots every year, and those usually start in October. We do several clinics throughout up at the UC, the nursing, athletics, in different places here on campus, so that all of the students have a chance to even get the free flu shot.
For students not on the clinic's health plan, don't worry, you can still get the flu shot, and for any other medical attention you may need, the clinic is able to charge majority of other insurances.
Yes, the insurance has nothing to do with getting the free flu shot. We just want to be able to make sure that it's getting put out there so all students have a chance at being flu-free every year.
Reporting from Cassidy Hall, this is Austin Sack, Bear News.
Remember, if you start to feel under the weather, it's always best to stay home and get lots of rest. To write is to put words on a page. To be a writer is to dig deeper to find the story that needs to be told. For Toni Morrison, she knew the story that needed to be shared, the Black narrative. Toni Morrison's birthday on February 20th by showcasing her posthumous documentary, Toni Morrison, The Pieces I Am. Toni Morrison was born Chloe Anthony Wofford and was an American novelist, essayist, book editor, and college professor. Her best-known novels are The Bluest Eye, Sula, Song of Solomon, Beloved, Jazz, Love, and A Mercy. She also helped edit Angela Davis's and Muhammad Ali's autobiographies. She was born into a working-class family in Lorain, Ohio, to Rama and George Wofford. Through folktales from her father, Morrison's literacy became ingrained with passion and enriched with African-American heritage.
There were points throughout the film that I laughed and that I was just in awe. I was educated. It was kind of a range of emotions, but I was really happy that I came and got to experience this, especially during Black History Month.
Morrison graduated from Howard University, the most distinguished black college of her year, 1949. She then went on to pursue an education at Cornell University, which led to her becoming a teacher at Texas Southern University. Morrison then made a return to her alma mater, Howard University. Morrison's work focused on African-American culture and the Black experience grappling with the obstacles of the white gaze. In the film, Morrison said, growing up, she noticed literature and movies about Black people were created for the white gaze. Her books were written for and about Black people.
I remember a review of Sula in which the reviewer said, this is all well and good, but one day she, meaning me, will have to face up to the real responsibilities and get mature and write about the real confrontation for Black people, which is white people. As though our lives have no meaning and no depth without the white gaze.
The New York Times describes her work as dreamlike and non-linear, spooling backward and forward in time as though characters bring the entire weight of history to bear on their every act. She earned her spot as the first Black editor in fiction at Random House and received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1993.
Bluest Eye, that was my first introduction to her, and I remember falling in love with it. It might have been either my senior year in high school or my first year in college, and I just remember thinking, wow, like this is really powerful. And after watching the documentary, watching the film, I said to myself that I was going to reread it so I can see, how I experience it now as an adult versus when I was an emerging or new adult, right, as a first-year college student. But it's my favorite when I think about novels that have made me feel something. The Bluest Eye is definitely one of them.
Toni Morrison died from complications of pneumonia August 5th, 2019 at age 88, leaving a legacy of 11 works presenting hope and justice for the Black community and influencing the way they pursue their identities.
Imagine having the X Games at your university. Well, the University of Northern Colorado had something similar and a lot more fun. Bear News reporter Morgan McKenzie got the scoop on the event.
Last Friday, the UNC Rec Center hosted the Rex Games, a night of free food and activities. Students could partake in group exercises, could practice their kicking skills with an inflatable target, could compete with their friends in a 30-second basketball shooting contest, and could even ice skate in the middle of the Rec Center with the UNC hockey players. There were activities for every person who attended this unique event. And if anyone worked up an appetite, places like Wing Shack and Crumble Cookies were handing out free food. For anyone who tried out the multiple activities around the Rec Center, they were rewarded with fake gold medals. Attendees had the chance to enter raffles to win prizes throughout the night. While all this excitement was going on, a competition was happening on the rock climbing wall. The Spring Cling climbing competition gave people a chance to compete against one another for prizes.
We're at the Rex Games, reporting live. I'm Morgan McKenzie, and this one's for you, Bear News.
For more information on events hosted by the Rec Center, go to the campus recreation page on the UNC website. It was laughs through the evening as UNC's Native American Student Services welcomed comedian Adrian Chalopa to the Lindau Auditorium at Mishner Library. Chalopa is a founding member of the comedy troupe Ladies of Native Comedy and has been touring for 10 years. She was featured in the Netflix series Larry Charles' Dangerous World of Comedy, and she also opened for Michelle Obama. Even though the audience was small, Chalopa's energy shined through, and the audience laughed through her 1-hour stand-up.
Most of the time, a Greeley House is open for commercially exploited people living in northern Colorado. But Bear News reporter Asia Cuevas tells that once a month it turns into Sparrow's Landing Boutique to raise money for survivors of sex trafficking. Thanks, Asia. The next weekend, the boutique.
All right, everybody.
Hey, party. Percentages in the high 30s, tons of wasted money, people dropping out every day. No, it's not your biology class. It's the presidential primaries.
And with more in Week After Week, we take a deeper look into the Harvey Weinstein case. Stay tuned. Wow.
Kids!
I don't want to talk about it.
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 Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency.
Kids, you all right?
This family's prepared. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan. Go to nyc.gov/readyny or call 311 for more information.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Former Vice President Joe Biden's flagging campaign has new life after his big win in South Carolina primary Saturday. Biden said the South Carolina primary would be his firewall. And it turns out he was right. Biden drew more than 250,000 votes Saturday, far outdistancing second-place finisher Bernie Sanders, who polled just over 105,000. That gave Biden nearly 50% of the vote, compared to Sanders' 20%. It also meant Biden picked up 39 of South Carolina's 54 pledged delegates to this summer's nominating convention. Sanders picked up the remaining 15 delegates. Tom Steyer finished in third place with about 11% of the vote, while former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg polling in 8%. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren finished a disappointing fifth with 7%, and Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar polling only 3% of the vote. The South Carolina primary results breathed new life into Biden's campaign, pulling him within 7 delegates of frontrunner Bernie Sanders and giving him momentum heading into Tuesday's primaries in 14 states. In between Saturday's primary and Super Tuesday, 3 more candidates called it quits. California environmentalist Tom Steyer led the way, announcing Saturday evening that he was suspending his campaign.
No question today that this campaign, we were disappointed with where we came out. I think we got 1 or 2 delegates from congressional districts, which I thank South Carolina for, and the people. But I said if I didn't see a path to winning, that I'd suspend my campaign. And honestly, I can't see a path where I can win the presidency. So am I going to continue to work on every single one of these issues? Yes, of course I am. Because
after spending millions of his own money, Steyer didn't pick up any delegates and finished third in South Carolina. Former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg was next, announcing Sunday night that his campaign for the nomination was over.
Today is a moment of truth. After a year of going everywhere, meeting everyone, defying every expectation, seeking every vote, the truth is that the path has narrowed to a close for our candidacy, if not for our cause. And we have a responsibility to consider the effect of remaining in this race any further. Our goal has always been to help unify Americans to defeat Donald Trump and to win the era for our values. So we must recognize that at this point in the race, the best way to keep faith with those goals and ideals is to step aside and help bring our party and our country together. So tonight, I am making the difficult decision to suspend my campaign for the presidency.
While he was successful in Iowa and New Hampshire and picked up 26 delegates total, he faltered badly in South Carolina, finishing in 4th place, far behind the leaders. And Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar became the 3rd candidate to drop out, announcing her decision Monday.
I believe we can do this together. And that is why today I am ending my campaign and endorsing Joe Biden for president.
Klobuchar finished a surprising third in the New Hampshire primary, but a poor finish in South Carolina convinced her to pull the plug. After withdrawing, both Buttigieg and Klobuchar endorsed Joe Biden's candidacy in what pundits and press reports suggested is an effort to coalesce more moderate support behind the former vice president and away from Senator Sanders.
So that brings us to the results of Super Tuesday, when more than 1,300 pledged delegates were up for grabs. That's about a third of all delegates, and 2/3 the number required for a first ballot nomination win. Did Biden's momentum carry him to better than expected finishes in the 14 states, particularly the southern ones? In a word, yes. California were the two big prizes on Tuesday's slate, with the Golden State awarding 415 delegates and Texas adding 228. And Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders each won one of them. Biden swept primaries in the southern states, picking up wins in Virginia, North Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, and Tennessee. He also eked out a 2% win over Sanders in Texas. Biden also got wins in Elizabeth Warren's Massachusetts, Minnesota, Maine, and Oklahoma. But it wasn't a complete sweep for the former vice president. Bernie Sanders won the biggest prize, California, though he didn't take all of the state's 415 delegates. Sanders also won his home state of Vermont and took victories in Utah and Colorado. So, taking a look at the all-important delegate count, Biden is now the leader, but Sanders is still very much in the game. Former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren had disappointing finishes, picking up only a few delegates here and there. One thing to note is that neither Biden nor Sanders claimed all of the delegates in any of the states. That means the delegate count remains fairly close between the two top finishers. There are still numerous primaries yet to be held, and 6 more states will vote on March 11th. And more fallout after Super Tuesday as both businessman Michael Bloomberg and Senator Elizabeth Warren announced that they are suspending their campaigns because of extremely poor showing in the Tuesday's primaries. Bloomberg announced his decision Tuesday evening, while Warren did so Thursday afternoon. Harvey Weinstein and his criminal charges became headline news again this past week, marking yet another major turn for the Me Too movement. The former Miramax producer first came into the spotlight when the New York Times featured dozens of women accusing Weinstein of sexual assault, rape, and sexual abuse while working for him in the film industry. That led to criminal investigations based on accusations from women in Los Angeles, New York City, and London. On May 2018, authorities arrested Weinstein in New York, sparking the Me Too movement, a social media-led revolution of women detailing their struggles as survivors of sexual assault and harassment within the system. After standing trial, a Manhattan, New York jury began deliberations on the trial evidence on February 18th. After 5 days, the jury found Weinstein guilty of criminal act in the first degree, as well as the charge of third-degree rape. But the jury acquitted him of the more serious charges, first-degree rape and 2 counts of predatory sexual assault, both of which could have sent him to jail for life. Yet, the ex-producer still faces up to 25 years in prison for his convictions. Judge James Burke scheduled the sentencing hearing for March 11th. We will keep you updated as the story develops. Coming up after the break, the final preliminary round of the Battle of the Bands is finally over, and we have the results. And what's next for the local maestros?
And a well-loved art exhibit enters the last week of its time at UNC. But that gives you one more week to travel back in time.
But first, Mackenzie Lake tells us all about what we can expect weather-wise. See you after this.
Jeff Foxworthy here. You know, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Well, thing is, there's a lot more to say. Like if you've ever found yourself burning yard debris and then walking away, well, you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
The weather recently has been perfect for hammocking, sport playing, or just laying around in the grass.
And for more on this warm weather trend and for what to expect in the weekend to come, we turn it over to our resident meteorologist, Mackenzie Lake.
Hi, I'm meteorologist Mackenzie Lake, and looking across our beautiful UNC campus right now, we see a little bit of clouds in the sky and lots of sunshine. These people out here, they're hammocking, having a nice, relaxing spring day. And if I were you, I would go out there and walk your dogs, go to the park, and just take full advantage of the Colorado sunshine that we have been seeing recently. Looking on into our right now temperatures across Greeley, Colorado, we can expect to see sunshine throughout the rest of the day with a high of 53 and a low of 26. Those winds are going to come in at the southeast at about 6 miles per hour, and that humidity will be a nice 57%. Looking all across Colorado, we do see Grand Junction and Durango in the mid-60s for a high. Then in Steamboat Springs, they will get up to a nice 44 degrees. And Denver and Pueblo, they will be right in the mid-50s for a high today. Looking on into your 8 a.m. class, make sure to go ahead and bring a coat because it will be a chilly 32 degrees. And on your 10 a.m. classes, I would still go ahead and keep that coat on because it will only warm up to a nice 44 degrees. And then moving on into 12 and 2 p.m., go ahead and ditch the coat because it will be a nice 60 degrees at 12 p.m. and 66 degrees at 2 p.m. Looking on into the weekend, we can expect to see partly cloudy skies on Saturday with a high of 68 and a low of 37. Moving on into Sunday, we will expect to see a 30% chance of those spring showers with a high of 64 and a low in the mid-30s. And on Monday of next week, we can expect to see partly cloudy skies with a high of 57 and a low of 32. And go ahead if you want to keep up to date with the spring, with Colorado moving into springtime. Follow me on Twitter with @Mackenzie with @Lake_Mackenzie, and my Instagram, which is @Mackenzie_Lake_. And that's all I have for weather. Back to you guys.
Every 4 years, we get an extra day, leap year.
And Bandwagon Magazine used it to host the final preliminary rounds for this year's Battle of the Bands.
Hody Staff Note, how are we doing this evening? Welcome back to the Battle of the Bands.
Last weekend became a surprising double feature of local musicians for the final 2 rounds of Battle of the Bands.
Please welcome to the stage, everybody, Taro.
First on stage was Taro, a Fort Collins-based duo that plays with dark lyrics and electronic tools to produce ominous electronic dance music. Next came Dreamspace Database, another electro jam duo that has honed the power of drums, bass, and electric keyboards.
Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for People in General.
After that was People in General, a trio jazz pop band who was coined as Best New Band in last year's Fort Collins Music Association Peer Awards. Finally came Lady Denim, a relatively new band that weaves an 80s aesthetic with pop sound to create the local popularity that they have today. After a roaring competition, People in General won the most fan votes, while Lady Denim ranked highly on judging sheets, advancing them to the next round. The following night, the fourth and final preliminary round was held at the Moxie Theater in downtown Greeley. First on the stage was Playwrights, a group of UNC students who met on campus and shared a love for both theater and alternative pop cultures. After them came Eston and the 86D, a country troupe with a large local following and otherwise creative band merchandise. Then came Hannah and the Cuddies, another group of UNC students that use brass instruments and instrumental breaks to create a funky jazz sound, as vocalist Hannah Rodriguez swooned the audience with both original songs and creative covers.
We want the live music, do we not? We want this battle to rage on!
The final band was Jellyfish Farm, a group of friends that utilize complex, atypical rhythms to create their math rock persona on stage. And the final winner of the night was Hannah and the Cuddies, while Eston and the 86D won roughly 100 tacos from Luna's Tacos for winning the fan vote.
Congratulations to the local bands, Nelson, Graham Good and the Painters, Lady Denim, and Hannah and the Cuddies for winning.
Bandwagon hasn't set the date for the final round yet, but we here at Bear News will be the first to let you know. For the past 6 months, you could see a unique piece of art in the Campus Commons Gallery.
But after all that time, the exhibit is on its way out, but not before giving us one last chance to say goodbye.
The Campus Commons might be the newest and shiniest and piest building on the UNC campus, but one corner of the building has been sent back in time. Well, at least for the past few months it has.
The Yucca Fountain has been on display in the Campus Commons since September of last year and gives students an interactive escape from the 21st century. You probably know what the Yucca Fountain is all about by this point, but if you don't, let's do a quick run-through. The Yucca Fountain was a 1915s diner located in the Amargosa Valley in Nevada. Now, the date and location of this installation are important because 1950s Nevada was, well, United States nuclear testing site, which gives this installation its slightly ominous feel. An ominous feeling that is further emphasized by this camper. This camper belonged to conspiracy theorist Burt Tuttle, a man who spent most of his life studying these nuclear testing sites and writing some of his findings in invisible ink that only UV light can see. And then, in 1958, the Yucca Fountain burned down. No one really knows why. Some people think it was an accident. Burt, our friend Burt, thinks it was the government.
But even though it burned down, not everything was lost. The two signs that you see, one on the exterior and one on the inside, are the originals, and the soda fountain is too. And while the Yucca Fountain is officially an art exhibit, there are still plenty of things for students to do there.
From the fridge, and in exchange for $1, you can get yourself an ice-cold refreshing soda. After that, you can plop yourself down at either the counter or booth and get some homework done.
But if you want to capitalize on this location, then you probably have to do it quickly because the Yucca Fountain is entering its last week. The last day of the exhibit is March 14th, and the space will close down and prepare for the next exhibit. But just as the original Yucca Fountain went down in a raging fire, this exhibit's going to go down with a raging party.
Okay, so that last part might not exactly be true, but they will be having a closing reception on March 11th from 4 to 7 p.m. where they'll have food and sodas and everything you could possibly want from the Yucca Fountain. Reporting from the Yucca Fountain, my name is Ben Shoemate, Bear News.
The reception is open to everyone, so if you want to go back in time one more, there's your chance.
They'll uninstall the exhibit during spring break and prepare for the annual student exhibition, which lasts from April 13th to May 1st. Do you like sports? What about UNC Bears sports? Well, I sure hope you do, because that's what we have on the other side of this break.
Our tie-wearing, pan-donning, suit-strutting sports anchor, Matt Jenkins, has all the scoop on all things Bears coming up.
When I first saw a turtle, my heart was full. Now I'm anything but lonely.
We have this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with Turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet, we discover they're a little bit of a lot of things.
But they're all pure love.
There's so many rewards in life. You coming into our home was one of the greatest rewards we could have ever had.
You know, it took 20 years and I got my third child who was 17 at the time.
It's so cool to watch the adult that you've become, and you really have done as much for us as you think we've done for you.
We scored? Yeah, we scored going to the playoffs. I can't believe I missed that. Every time I'm buzzed, I spend too much time on my phone. What? I should take your phone away. No. I'll call for a ride. Wait, why does my face look like that?
I'm playing with these new face filters.
Okay, you know what? Yep, that's mine.
Kevin, I need that back.
No.
Kevin!
The last two games for senior Jonah Radabaugh and the Bears told two very different stories. Last week against Idaho, the Bears dominated the Vandals 93-49. The 44-point win was the largest margin of victory in program's history. Radabaugh led the Bears with his fourth double-double in the past 8 games and was one of 4 Bears to put up double figures. Bodie Hume and Kai Edwards led the team with 17 points, and Sam Maston chipped in an extra 14. And with the last game at the bank called for a packed house for senior night against Eastern Washington. The game was tightly contested all night long, with neither team leading more than 7 points at any point in the game. With more than 9 lead changes in the game, the Bears had a chance to tie it in the last 5 seconds. Radabaugh drove into the lane, missed the game-tying layup, and the Eagles shot an extra 2 free throws, extending their lead to 4. And that was all she wrote, as the Bears fell short 68-64. And the Bears suit up again tonight in Missoula, Montana, to take on the Grizzlies. So be sure to catch them on channel 537 or listen in on 1310 KFKA. And for UNC women's basketball team, they hit the road and played 2 tough games, but could only finish at 500. The first game was hard-fought match against the Idaho Vandals, and the Bears fell short 70-65. It was back-and-forth battle for much of the game up until the fourth quarter when the Vandals took over. Freshman Alicia Davis was the leading scorer with 19 points, and she recorded her 5th double-double with 10 rebounds. Michaela Eisenbart added 16 points on 7 of 10 shooting and went 2 for 3 behind the arc. The second game was another close one, but UNC swept the series against Eastern Washington with a 67-61 victory. And this game looked rough after the second quarter when the Eagles had a 10-point lead. The Bears' offense came to life in the third quarter and overtook the Eagles with a 30-point quarter. Eisenbart led UNC with 24 points, including 6 three-pointers, both of which are her career high. Davis maintained her high level of play, shooting 50% and adding 19 points of her own. After taking the lead in the third, UNC never gave it back, outscoring the Eagles 45-29 in the second half. The Bears come home for their final 2 games of the season, starting with Montana on March 4th at 7 p.m. The WAC championships for the women's swimming and diving got a big of a shakeup on Thursday as the water main broke at the University of Houston. The break delayed competition, and officials had to get creative to get back onto schedule. So the championship changed formats to no longer hold preliminary rounds for its events, but just one set of rounds considered the finals. Despite the change, the Bears still put up a strong performance during the 4-day event, which began Wednesday and finished Saturday. UNC placed 6th out of 8 teams, but had great individual performances. Freshman Tori Sayers placed 8th in the 1-meter dive competition after putting scores in the 200 range for both her preliminary and final rounds. The girls on the 200 freestyle relay team qualified for the National Invitational Championships with a time of 1 minute and 31.11 seconds. They'll join several other team members who qualified in their individual events. The Bears who qualified head to the National Invitational Championships in Cleveland, Ohio on March 12th through the 14th. And we're going to head over to the Diamond for men's baseball. They battled against Boise State Broncos for a historic game this past weekend. And it was the first time for the Broncos in 40 years that they held a home game. But unfortunately, after suffering a tough losing weekend to New Mexico Lobos the previous weekend, the Bears endured another losing weekend in the 4-game series against Boise State. The Bears opened the series with a 4-0 loss. Then they played 2 games on Saturday, forcing the first one into extra innings, but they could not pull out the win after losing 5-4. In the second game, the Bears jumped to a quick first-inning 2-run lead, and it was a back-and-forth game until the Broncos earned 7 runs in the 7th inning. The Bears did everything they could, scoring 5 runs in the final 4 innings, but it wasn't enough to win. They lost that one 12-9. Sunday wasn't much nicer to the Bears as they wrapped up the weekend with their 4th and final game, 8-2. After another losing weekend, the Bears finally get off the road and come back home when they host their home opener against North Dakota State at Jackson Field. And the first game of the 4-game series against the Bison is Friday, March 6th at 2 p.m. And the women's softball team had a little bit more success in New Mexico this weekend than the men did 2 weekends ago. The team played in the Lobo Classic against schools such as South Dakota, New Mexico, and LaSalle. And hungry to take a winning series this weekend, the Bears did just that after a tough start. UNC started the series with a loss against South Dakota 6-4, and the Bears turned things around, picking up wins against New Mexico and LaSalle while losing the game in between. The win versus LaSalle is the biggest win so far for the Bears this season. Alyssa Wenzel got some big hits as she hit her first career home run, adding a hit from Maddie Young, scoring Lauren Strathern, and the Bears were up 5-0 after 1.5 innings. In the final inning, the Bears scored 7 runs off 5 hits and closing the game out 16-2. Making sure they weren't hungover from Saturday night's game, the Bears closed out the weekend beating New Mexico 8-4. And the Bears come out of the Lobo Classic with a 3-2 record. Now they get a break from traveling as well as they host the Northern Colorado Tournament this Friday to Sunday. And you can catch all the games at the Gloria Rodriguez Field in Greeley. And I don't know about you guys, but it's going to be a nice weekend, so make sure you grab that ball cap, head out to the Diamond, watch some baseball and softball.
Oh, yeah, and make sure to bring your sunscreen. And even if you don't want to come out and support the Bears, at least just go outside. This is the first nice days we've had in who knows how long. Come on.
It's a good day for a drink.
Exactly. Well,
thanks for tuning in.
Yes, please reach out to us if you have any questions or any tips for us. And as always, have a good weekend.